The lobby was buzzing with the usual Monday chaos, phones ringing, printers humming, and employees rushing from one desk to another. But everything stopped for a moment when the glass doors slid open and a man walked in wearing worn-out sneakers, a faded jacket, and a calm, almost silent expression. People looked at him the way they look at someone who doesn't belong. Someone who looks too simple for a place carved in marble and gold accents. At the center of the lobby stood Manager Brent, a man who believed the world ran on looks, money, and arrogance. He adjusted his shiny tie, glanced at the poor-looking man approaching the counter, and smirked the moment their eyes met. "Hold up," Brent said loudly, raising his hand as if stopping traffic. "Sir, this isn't the charity corner. The exit is behind you." A few staff members chuckled. Not because it was funny, because they were afraid not to laugh. But the man didn't flinch. He simply stood there, calm, hands folded politely, waiting for the noise to settle. Brent walked closer, eyeing the man from head to toe with a disgusted smile. "You lost. This is a corporate office, not a free shelter. People here have appointments, bank accounts, and, actual money." The man nodded slightly, as if letting the insult pass through him like wind. "I'm here to see someone in management," he said softly. Brent burst into laughter. Management. The word felt like a joke coming from a man who looked like he'd spent the night on a sidewalk. "Management," Brent repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Sir, the only management you need is maybe managing to buy a decent shirt." More laughter. More eyes turning. More whispering. Still, the man stood silent. There was something unusual about his stillness, like he'd been through storms far bigger than this moment. But Brent, fueled by ego, couldn't see that. All he saw was a man in rags who dared to stand in a place he didn't fit. "You clearly don't understand how things work here," Brent said, leaning forward. "If you want to hand out flyers, go outside. If you want to ask for donations, go to the next block. But asking to meet management? Come on. Don't embarrass yourself." The man's eyes didn't shift, didn't blink. He spoke again, calmly. "I'm just here for a simple matter. Nothing more." Brent scoffed. "A simple matter?" He pointed at the door again. "How about simply leaving?" The man reached into his pocket. The employees leaned in, some expecting security to step forward, others waiting for Brent to escalate the humiliation. Instead, the man pulled out a folded paper, clean and crisp despite his rugged clothes. He placed it on the counter gently. Brent didn't even look at it. He pushed it back with one finger. "We don't accept random street papers here. If you think you can walk in dressed like that and get attention, you're mistaken." The man picked the paper back up, holding it with the same calmness that had unsettled a few observers. Not once did his eyes show frustration. Not once did he argue. And that silence, that unshakable calm, only irritated Brent even more. "Listen," Brent said, crossing his arms, "you're wasting everyone's time. I've got real clients to deal with. People with appointments. People with status. Not whatever this is." The man nodded once. "Understood." He turned, not in anger, not in defeat, just quietly, as if he had expected this reaction long before he stepped in. A few employees watched him walk toward the exit, whispering that something about him felt familiar. Something about the way he carried himself didn't match his clothes. But before anyone could figure it out, Brent clapped his hands loudly. "All right, everyone. Show's over. Let's get back to work. Not every day we get auditions for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in rags." The employees laughed again, but the jokes didn't land as hard this time. A few felt uncomfortable, unsure if Brent had gone too far. The man's calmness had unsettled them all in a way they couldn't explain. Meanwhile, outside the glass doors, the man stood still for a moment, looking at the building sign. He took a deep breath, not in anger, but in patience, as if he knew something no one else in that lobby knew. And he did. Because an hour later, the manager received a letter that ended his career forever. The Grand Meridian Corporate Center was the kind of place where everything felt intentionally designed to make people feel small. From the towering glass doors to the marble floor polished so perfectly it reflected faces like mirrors, every inch screamed wealth, status, and hierarchy. Anyone who walked through its entrance knew exactly where they stood in the invisible ladder of importance. And on this particular morning, the lobby was buzzing with the usual mix of tension and ambition. Employees hurried across the floor holding stacks of files like they were carrying their futures. Clients waited impatiently in leather chairs, eyes flicking between their watches and the reception desk. Phones rang non-stop, echoing against the high ceilings. In the middle of all this, Manager Brent strutted around like a man who owned the entire building. His suit was as bright as his ego, and his polished shoes tapped sharply with each authoritative step. He didn't greet employees, he commanded them. "Did you finish the audit report? No excuses. That presentation better be flawless this time. Yes, you, don't stand there like a statue. Move." Every order was delivered with a smirk, as if humiliating people was part of his job description. The staff obeyed quickly, not because they respected him, but because arguing with Brent meant risking your career. At the counter, a new trainee accidentally dropped a stack of folders. Papers scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. Brent turned sharply, his expression twisting in annoyance. "You've got to be kidding me," he said loudly, making sure everyone heard. "How hard is it to hold papers? Do I need to hire adults or kindergarten graduates?" The trainee bent down nervously, trying to gather the papers before Brent exploded further. But Brent wasn't done. He crouched down just enough to whisper harshly, "If you mess up again, don't bother clocking in tomorrow." Employees nearby froze. They'd seen this scene many times. Brent never missed a chance to assert dominance, especially over someone new or insecure. Then, as if the air shifted, the glass doors opened again. A man stepped inside. No one recognized him at first. Why would they? He wasn't dressed like the high-profile figures that usually visited the building. He wore worn-out sneakers, a faded jacket, and jeans that looked like they had survived more than a few storms. His hair was slightly messy, his posture relaxed, and he carried no portfolio, no briefcase, no signs of status. Just calmness. He walked slowly, with a gentle stride that contrasted sharply with the building's rushed energy. Some employees glanced at him, then quickly dismissed him. He didn't look like a client. He didn't look like anyone important. But something about him didn't match the assumptions people made. His eyes had a depth that wasn't shaped by poverty or fear, more like someone who had seen the world from angles no one else had. He approached the counter politely, waiting his turn without interrupting anyone. Brent noticed him the moment he stepped closer. The smirk returned instantly. "Sir," Brent said, raising an eyebrow, "this area is for scheduled visitors. You sure you're in the right building?" The man nodded softly. "Yes. I'm here to see someone in management." A few employees looked up. Some whispered. Others tried to hold back grins. "Management? This man?" Brent let out a short, mocking chuckle. "Management? Right. And I'm the president of the Philippines." The man didn't react. Just stood there quietly. Brent continued, "Look, I don't know what you're trying to sell, but we're not hiring, we're not donating, and we're not interested." The man bowed his head slightly, as if acknowledging Brent's words without accepting them. "I'm not here to sell anything. I simply have a matter to address." Brent leaned against the counter, exaggerating his posture to show dominance. "And this matter," he motioned to the man's clothes, "requires you to look like this?" The employees nearby held back laughter, though a few expressions softened with discomfort. Some recognized that the man's calmness felt strangely dignified, but Brent's harshness drowned out any doubt. The man responded gently, "I came as I am." Brent snorted. "Well, here's the thing. You can't come as you are in a place like this. This is a professional environment. People here have standards." The man's gaze didn't shift. "Respect is a standard too." Brent blinked, just once, irritation flickering through his eyes. "Did you just lecture me?" The man shook his head. "No. Just speaking plainly." The calmness in his voice annoyed Brent even more. Arrogant people fear nothing more than someone they can't intimidate. "All right," Brent said sharply. "Let me be clear. You look like someone who walked in by mistake. We don't entertain walk-ins from people with no appointment, no credentials, and no—" He eyed the man again. "Presentation. The man reached into his pocket and handed Brent a folded paper. Brent didn't even check it. Whatever this is, I'm not looking at it until you come back dressed in something remotely respectable. The man retrieved the paper calmly. I understand. He didn't argue. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't defend himself. He simply stepped aside, as if waiting patiently for the world to reveal itself in its own time. One employee watching whispered to another, "He looks familiar. I swear I've seen that face somewhere." But Brent rolled his eyes. "Before we continue, tell me, have you ever been judged by your appearance?" he asked sarcastically to the room, hoping to get another laugh. This time, no one responded. Brent didn't know it yet, but the quiet man he just mocked was Manny Pacquiao. And nothing about what was coming next could be stopped. The tension in the lobby thickened as Manny stood quietly near the counter, holding the folded document in his hand. He didn't fidget. He didn't shift his weight. He simply waited, like a man who had learned long ago that patience often revealed people's true nature faster than anger ever could. Brent, meanwhile, strutted back toward him with an exaggerated sigh, as if merely having to stand near Manny was an inconvenience. "All right," he said loudly, "since you're still here, let's get this over with. What exactly do you want?" Manny unfolded the document slowly and placed it on the counter with both hands, carefully, respectfully, the way someone would handle something important. "I'd like to submit this for processing," he said gently. Brent didn't even reach for it. "Processing?" He almost choked at the audacity. "For processing," Brent repeated, smiling sarcastically. "Do you even know what kind of place this is? We're not a pawn shop. We don't do scrap paper here." A few staff members snickered. Others tried not to. Manny's expression didn't change. Brent finally snatched the document up with 2 fingers, as if it were dirty. He looked at it for half a second and laughed, an obnoxious, condescending laugh that echoed across the marble lobby. "Oh, this is precious," he said. "A meeting request with senior management? Seriously? Did you think wearing rags would get you sympathy points? Or did you wander in hoping someone would hand you a free lunch?" The staff burst into louder laughter this time, encouraged by Brent's cruelty. One even muttered under his breath, "He really thought he could meet the execs? In those shoes." Brent slapped the paper on the counter. "We don't serve beggars. Walk-ins like you don't get meetings. You don't get appointments. You don't get attention. You get directions to the door." Still, Manny remained calm. His voice didn't rise. His posture didn't stiffen. He simply answered with the same steady tone. "Respect is free. You should try giving it." For a moment, just one, Brent's smile faltered. The truth stung him more than the words. Then he scoffed, trying to regain control. "Respect? Did you seriously come in here dressed like a street performer and start talking about respect?" He grabbed the document again and held it up for the staff to see. "You all see this? This guy thinks he can waltz in here and demand a meeting with the board. In this." He pointed at Manny's jacket. "Maybe if you had cleaned yourself up before coming here, someone might have taken you seriously." A few employees laughed again, though some of them did it nervously, because Manny's composure didn't match Brent's insults. If anything, Manny's silence made Brent look even worse. But Brent wasn't finished. "You want to know the problem with people like you," he said, stepping closer. "You think being quiet and polite means the world owes you something. Newsflash, it doesn't. You don't belong here. You don't belong in any place where real business is done. You belong." He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he took the document, crumpled it slowly, and tossed it into the trash bin beside the counter. The sound of the paper hitting the bottom echoed more loudly than any insult. A hush fell over the lobby. But then Brent went one step further. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a small silver lighter, flicked it open, and set the edge of the paper on fire. A few gasps spread across the lobby as flames curled through the document, turning it black. The staff stared, some shocked, some uncomfortable, some pretending to be entertained so they wouldn't become Brent's next target. Manny didn't move. He watched the flame quietly, his expression unreadable. When the fire burned itself out, Brent kicked the remains deeper into the bin, dusting off his hands theatrically. "And that," he said proudly, is how we handle nonsense around here." He leaned forward, inches from Manny's face. "Now, you can politely get out. Otherwise security will be happy to show you the sidewalk." Manny looked at him, not with anger, not with fear, but with the kind of calm that made Brent subtly step back, even if he didn't realize it. Then Manny spoke softly, quietly, but in a way that made every word land with weight. "People reveal themselves when they think no one is watching." Brent rolled his eyes. "Spare me the philosophy. This isn't a motivational seminar." Manny took a step back from the counter. "I didn't come here to argue," he said. "I came here to observe." "Observe what?" Brent mocked. "How we run a real business." "Well, congratulations. You saw it." Manny nodded slightly. "Yes. I saw everything." There was something unsettling about the way he said it, something that made a few employees exchange looks. Brent didn't notice. He was too busy basking in his own arrogance. "Well, good," Brent said. "Now get out before I call security. Last warning." Manny took a slow breath, then turned toward the doors. The entire lobby watched him walk, not because he looked defeated, but because he looked oddly unmoved, almost as if the entire scene had gone exactly as he expected. That calmness, that quiet confidence, it lingered in the air long after he touched the door. And as he stepped outside, a chill ran through two employees who whispered to each other. "There's something about him. I swear I've seen him before." Brent waved them off, laughing triumphantly. He didn't know it yet, but the document he burned was the one document he should have treated with respect. Because in less than an hour, the truth would explode through those glass doors. And when it did, the entire building would remember this moment as the beginning of Manager Brent's downfall. For a moment, the entire hall froze. Not even the air dared to move. The sound of the manager's mocking laughter still lingered in the room like a foul smell, but everything else went silent, dead silent. Customers who had been busy with their morning routines now paused mid-step, mid-sentence, mid-sip. Even the clinking of a spoon against a glass came to an abrupt stop. People turned their heads slowly, unsure if they had heard correctly. Had the manager really just ridiculed a stranger like that? Had he truly spoken with such venom, such ego, such cruelty? Whispers began to ripple around the hall like small waves forming before a storm. Did he really say that? Man, that was uncalled for. Why would he humiliate him like that? He didn't do anything wrong. One staff member standing behind the counter covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes widened as if she had just witnessed a crime. "That was too much," she muttered to the barista beside her. "He didn't have to talk to him like that, even if he looked poor." The barista nodded, still stunned. "Yeah, the manager's never been this harsh before." But another staff member, an older cashier, wasn't simply shocked. Something about the man in rags, his posture, the way he carried himself, the quiet dignity even in humiliation, triggered a memory. She squinted, leaning forward. "Wait," she murmured. "Wait a second." The people around her glanced at her, sensing she had noticed something. "What is it?" someone whispered. The cashier narrowed her eyes even more, as if her brain was flipping through thousands of mental images like pages of a book. "I know that face," she said softly, almost afraid to believe it. "I've seen him before." Others turned their attention to Manny. He wasn't reacting. He wasn't defending himself. He wasn't correcting the manager. He wasn't even angry. He simply stood there, quiet, composed, breathing evenly. His silence only made the tension in the room thicker. The cashier stepped closer, looking at Manny from a different angle, trying to match the man in front of her with someone she had once seen on television. "That's," she whispered, her voice cracking with disbelief. "That's Manny Pacquiao." Someone behind her gasped. "No way. It can't be him. He looks too different. But the eyes. Look at his eyes. Manny Pacquiao. Here. Dressed like that." People started shifting closer, forming a loose circle around the scene, not invading his space, but drawn by curiosity, suspicion, and a growing sense of shock. Their voices stayed low, but the whispers grew thicker, faster, overlapping like the rustling of dry leaves. "I swear that's him." "No, it can't be." Why would Manny Pacquiao dress like that? Maybe he's doing a charity thing. Or undercover. Or maybe he just wanted a normal day. The staff behind the counter stared with open mouths. One of them turned pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. "If that really is Manny, the manager is finished." While all of this happened, Manny remained calm. He didn't flinch. He didn't look embarrassed. He didn't even look offended. He simply stepped aside, not in fear, but with a quiet patience, as though he already knew how the story would unfold. He waited near a small pillar, hands folded gently in front of him, letting everyone else react but refusing to be part of the chaos. His calmness was almost unsettling. It was the kind of silence that demanded respect without a single word. A customer leaned to his friend and whispered, "It's like he's letting the truth reveal itself." The friend nodded. "He's not denying anything. He's just waiting." All eyes slowly drifted back to the manager. The same manager who had loudly mocked Manny minutes earlier now felt the heat of dozens of stares burning into his skin. He pretended not to notice. He stood stiff, chest still puffed, but his confidence was slipping. His fingers twitched. A drop of sweat rolled down his temple. "Why is everyone staring?" he snapped, trying to keep his voice steady. "He's just some homeless guy." "Are you sure?" a voice from the back asked. The manager froze. "Because he doesn't look homeless to me," the voice continued. "He looks familiar." More people murmured in agreement. The tension now felt like a rope pulled tight between two cliffs, ready to snap at any moment. Every person in the hall sensed the shift. The manager could no longer control the room. His authority, once loud and obnoxious, was now shrinking with every whisper that echoed through the air. And Manny, silently waiting near the pillar, only made the suspense stronger. His stillness was powerful. His patience, intimidating. His quiet presence alone felt like a storm gathering behind calm clouds. Someone near the entrance stepped forward, squinting hard at Manny's face. Then, suddenly, "That is Manny Pacquiao." The room sucked in a breath at once. Others gasped, jolted by the certainty in that voice. The revelation hit the room like a lightning strike. The staff stiffened. Customers covered their mouths. A woman dropped the bag she was holding. And the manager, visibly swallowed hard. But Manny didn't move. He just waited. Quiet. Calm. Letting the truth crash down on the man who had mocked him. The hall remained silent again, this time not from confusion, but from the shock of recognition. The suspense was no longer about who Manny was. Now the real suspense was, what will happen next? The hall remained frozen. Every whisper, every gasp, every glance had gone silent the moment someone confirmed Manny Pacquiao's identity. Yet the story wasn't done, not even close. The real shock was still waiting outside the building, seconds from crashing through the front doors. A deep rumbling sound approached from the street. People turned toward the large glass windows just in time to see a shiny black SUV glide up to the curb, its engine smooth, its presence commanding. The vehicle didn't just arrive, it announced itself. The tinted doors opened in perfect sync, and out stepped a group of sharply dressed executives in tailored suits, polished shoes, and badges from the company's central office. The air changed instantly. The staff who had been whispering suddenly straightened. Customers leaned back as the executives strode toward the entrance with purpose, each step confident, synchronized, and unmistakably official. The manager's eyes widened. His arrogance, once so loud and untouchable, began evaporating like mist. What's going on?" he whispered to himself. The doors swung open. The executive team marched in with an authority that filled every corner of the room. They weren't here for casual business. They weren't here for a routine visit. They were here for him. The man everyone had mocked. The man the manager had humiliated. The man silently standing near the pillar, unnoticed in rags. The lead executive, a tall man with silver-rimmed glasses, looked around the hall once before locking eyes with Manny. And then, in front of everyone, he bowed his head respectfully. "Sir, we're here for your scheduled inspection." The word "sir" echoed through the room like a thunderclap. People who had been whispering now held their breath. A woman near the counter nearly dropped her phone. Someone muttered, Inspection? For him. The manager staggered backward, his lips parting without sound. The executives continued walking, past confused customers, past stunned employees, until they reached Manny. Then, one by one, they greeted him with full, practiced respect. "Good morning, Mr. Pacquiao. Sir, thank you for coming in person. We apologize for arriving a few minutes late." Every word stabbed deeper into the silence. Everyone watched, wide-eyed, unable to process what was happening. The man in rags was being addressed like royalty, like a CEO, like someone untouchable. And the manager, arms frozen stiff at his sides, couldn't make his throat form a single word. The second executive turned to the room, raising his voice slightly so no one would miss it. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pacquiao is our new investor, and technically your superior." A shockwave rolled through the hall. A bag fell to the floor. A fork clattered against a plate. Someone audibly gasped. The cashier who recognized Manny earlier whispered, "I knew it! I knew it!" The manager's knees almost buckled. Superior," he whispered, color draining from his face. The executive nodded sharply. "Mr. Pacquiao is now one of the majority stakeholders of this franchise group. This branch is under his direct oversight." The room went silent again. But this silence was different. Heavier, more fearful, more electrifying. All eyes turned to Manny. The man who had been insulted. The man who had been mocked. The man who was treated like dirt. Now revealed as the one holding the highest authority in the building. Manny looked at his executives, then at the staff, then finally at the manager. His face remained calm in a way only someone who had mastered patience could manage. Slowly, he stepped forward. "I didn't come here to impress anyone," Manny said quietly. "I didn't come dressed like this for attention." He looked down at his worn shoes, his simple shirt, then back up at the stunned crowd. "I came in rags," he continued, "to see how people treat those who seem unimportant." A sharp breath swept across the hall. The executives lowered their heads, not in shame, but in agreement. Manny's voice remained steady, low, but powerful. "Respect," he said, "is not something that depends on clothes, or money, or status. It's something every human deserves, rich or poor." The staff nodded slowly, taking in every word. Several looked away, guilty. Others stared at the manager, waiting for his reaction. But the manager couldn't move. His face twitched. His lips trembled. Sweat gathered on his forehead. The truth hit him harder than any punch Manny had ever thrown in the ring. He had mocked the wrong man. He had humiliated the one person he should have welcomed. And now the entire building knew it. Manny's final glance at the manager was calm, but devastating. "You didn't know who I was," he said, "and that's fine. But the way you treated me, that was your choice." The manager's throat clicked as he swallowed, unable to defend himself. The room waited. What would happen? What would Manny do? Would the manager lose everything? Would Manny show mercy? Everyone stood at the edge of suspense, their hearts pounding, their breaths trapped inside their chests. Then Manny looked at the crowd, then at the camera, his voice steady. "Fire or forgive? Comment below." The room held its breath. And the screen fades to black. The hall felt colder now, like the walls themselves were waiting for judgment to fall. Every eye was locked on Manny Pacquiao, the man who had arrived in rags yet now stood as the highest authority in the room. And in front of him, trembling like a leaf in a storm, was the manager whose arrogance had finally collapsed on top of him. The manager's voice cracked first. "Yes, sir." "Mr. Pacquiao, please. I beg you." He staggered forward, barely able to stand. His hands shook violently, his eyes glazed with panic. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know who you were. If I had—" Manny raised a hand gently, and the manager instantly froze. "That's exactly the problem," Manny said softly. "You shouldn't need to know who someone is to treat them with respect." The words hit harder than any shout could have. Quiet, firm, unshakably true. The manager dropped to his knees. The same man who barked orders. The same man who humiliated staff. The same man who laughed at a stranger in rags. Now bowed in fear. "Sir, please. I'm begging you. Give me another chance," he pleaded, voice breaking. "I have worked here for years. I've built this branch. I made mistakes today. But I can change. Please, don't end my career." People watched with mixed emotions, some pity, some satisfaction, some silent reflection. The staff who had been mocked daily by this manager now saw justice unfold right before them, not through anger, but through truth. Manny looked down at the trembling man with calm, steady eyes. "I'm not here to end anyone's life," Manny said. "But understand this, your behavior decides your future, not mine." The manager's face twisted in desperation. "Sir, But before he could finish, one of the executives approached with a crisp envelope in his hand. "Mr. Clark," the executive announced formally, "as per corporate regulation and the authority of our new investor, this is your official termination letter." The manager's head snapped up. "No, no, no, please." His voice became hoarse. He reached for the paper, not to accept it, but to push it away. "Sir Manny, please. Just one chance." The executive placed the letter firmly on the counter in front of him. "This is final." Silence rippled through the room. The staff who had been ridiculed day after day now watched justice settle like dust. There was no cruelty in the decision, no revenge, just accountability. Consequences. Balance. The manager collapsed fully, shoulders shaken by silent sobs. But Manny did not smirk. He did not boast. He did not celebrate. He simply turned away and scanned the room until his eyes landed on someone standing near the back, a security guard in a simple uniform, the same man who had earlier spoken respectfully to Manny, even when everyone else mocked him. The guard stiffened nervously as Manny approached. "You," Manny said gently. "You treated me with kindness. You spoke with respect, even when others didn't." The guard swallowed hard. "Sir, I was just doing my job." "No," Manny replied. "You were being human. That's rare." The executives exchanged knowing glances. Manny turned to the head executive beside him. "From today," Manny said calmly, "promote this man." A wave of surprise rolled across the room. The guard blinked rapidly. "Sir, me? Promote me?" Manny nodded. "Yes. Your behavior deserves it." Customers clapped softly. Employees smiled in relief and pride. For the first time all day, the atmosphere brightened, not from arrogance, but from fairness. The executive stepped forward and shook the guard's hand. "Congratulations," he said. "You're being promoted immediately. New responsibilities, higher pay, and leadership training." The guard nearly teared up. "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much." Manny placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Keep treating people the way you did today," he said. "That's real leadership." The old manager sobbed quietly behind them, but Manny didn't look back. Not out of cruelty, but because the lesson had already been delivered. No shouting. No anger. No revenge. Just truth. Manny took one last look around the hall, the place where he had been humiliated, then recognized, and finally respected. A place that had revealed its true faces under pressure. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the exit. His steps were calm. His expression peaceful. His silence louder than any speech. The staff watched as the man in rags, now unmistakably their superior, walked out of the building, his executives following behind. Justice had been served. Wisdom had been spoken. And consequences had landed exactly where they were deserved. The doors closed behind Manny Pacquiao. And in that moment, everyone understood one thing. Respect is not earned by status. It is earned by character. The lobby slowly returned to motion, but the energy inside it had changed forever. People stood in small clusters, whispering about what they had just witnessed, yet their tone wasn't filled with gossip anymore. It was filled with realization, with reflection, with a quiet kind of respect that came from seeing the truth unfold in front of them. The guard who had been promoted still stood frozen, hand on his chest, trying to absorb what had just happened. The staff members who had laughed earlier stared at the floor, shame rising in their eyes. The customers glanced at one another, each of them silently thinking the same thing. How many times had they judged someone too quickly? A man in rags had walked in. A legend had walked out. And the only thing that separated those two realities was perspective. The space Manny Pacquiao had just left felt fuller, brighter, as if his message lingered in the air like a warm echo. He didn't preach. He didn't punish. He didn't brag. He simply revealed a truth that most people forget. Respect costs nothing, but it means everything. The employees slowly returned to their desks, but their hearts were not the same. Even the customers who were about to leave paused near the exit, thinking about how they had viewed him earlier, how quickly they believed the manager's arrogance, and how easily they'd assumed the worst. One older customer shook his head gently and whispered to himself, never again will I judge someone by their clothes. Another nodded. That man taught us more in silence than others teach with speeches. Because the truth is simple. Money fades. Titles change. Status rises and falls. But character stays. Manny's calm presence, no bodyguards, no expensive suit, no entourage, proved something far deeper than wealth or fame ever could. He showed the world that humility is not a weakness. It is strength wrapped in patience. Power covered in kindness. Greatness hidden inside simplicity. And the message he left behind became a mirror for everyone in that building. How many times do we walk past people without seeing them? How often do we decide someone's worth based on what they wear? How easily do we turn away because someone looks less important? The situation at that office reminded everyone of a painful truth. The person you look down on today might be the one above you tomorrow. Life has a strange sense of balance. It flips tables. It changes roles. It humbles the proud and lifts the kind. The manager learned that the hard way. He spent years wearing his expensive suits, flashing status, speaking down to those he believed were beneath him. But one single hour, brought everything crashing down. And it didn't happen because someone wanted revenge. It happened because the world simply reflected his own behavior back at him. The guard learned the opposite truth. A moment of kindness, simple, sincere, effortless, became the key that opened a door he never expected. He didn't know Manny's identity. He didn't try to impress him. He simply treated him like a human being. And that kindness became his promotion. Small actions. Big consequences. That's how life works. If there was one lesson left in the room, one final message resting softly in everyone's chest, it was this. Never judge anyone by their clothes. Respect is the only true uniform. Clothes tear. Shoes wear out. Social status fades. Appearances mislead. But a respectful heart, a humble spirit, a kind word, those never lose value. That's the kind of wealth everyone can afford, and the kind that transforms the world one interaction at a time. As Manny's SUV disappeared down the road, the final memory he left behind wasn't his authority or his title as an investor. It wasn't the shock of his identity reveal. It wasn't even the justice delivered. It was the quiet way he walked out. No anger, no pride, no triumph. Just a gentle reminder that real strength doesn't need to shout. Real strength stands still. Real strength forgives. Real strength respects even when others don't. And now it's your turn. Yes, you. If you're reading this, take a moment and look inside your own life. Who have you judged too quickly? Who have you misunderstood? Who deserves kindness you forgot to give? Because the truth is simple. Humility is the real power. Respect is the real strength. And kindness is the real victory. If you believe that, even a little bit, type respect in the comments. Let's fill the world with one message today. Respect for everyone, no matter how they look. Because the world becomes better every time you choose to be kind.